CPI data is out for Canada for July of 2024, and it looks promising depending on what camp you're in. CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, rose on a year-over-year basis in the month of July 2.5%. This is the slowest increase of CPI since March of 2021, and we're down from the increase of 2.7%, which we saw in June of 2024. Moving over to shelter prices, we saw a 5.7% increase in shelter prices. This is down from 6.2% in June, which is mainly due to decelerating rent prices and mortgage interest costs. Now, although they're decelerating, we still see quite an increase in shelter prices at 5.7% compared to the CPI as a whole, which is 2.5%. So more than double what the CPI is. July 12th of 2023 was where we saw the last hike by Bank of Canada, bringing interest rates to 5%. Now the overnight rate sits at 4.5%. So in the coming months, as these higher rates make their way through the system, we should see a pretty substantial impact of that on our shelter inflation figure. That being said, mortgage interest cost is still up 21% year over year. And this isn't due to people's variable rate mortgages increasing, because people on a variable rate have actually seen a decrease in their payments because Bank of Canada's overnight rate was higher last July than it is this July. But this is a case of people renewing their fixed rate mortgages, because most people take fixed rate mortgages. Most people take 5-year fixed rate mortgages. So if you're renewing your mortgage, which you negotiated back in 2019, now the likelihood that your mortgage interest cost is higher and your rate is higher is almost certain. Rent is up 8.5% year over year, still a very high figure, even though we're down from the 8.8% we saw in June. There is still going to be a lot of pressure on the rental market because there's just more demand than there is supply. Now we see a lot of these purpose-built rental buildings being built and housing starts, which is great, but that doesn't unlock supply right now. It unlocks supply in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So I think we're still going to see short-term pressure on the rental market for the next couple years at least. So with all this data, how does this affect the market? Well, with CPI being at 2.5%, to me, this is almost a shoo-in for a Bank of Canada cut come September. They closely monitor inflation, and if they're seeing declines or decelerations in all the categories that they're monitoring, that's a very good case for another rate cut come September. From my point of view, even though it's the middle of summer and historically not a busy time, the housing market feels slow and the economy just feels slow in general. To me, it feels like people are holding on to their money. People with money are waiting for opportunity. People without money are not spending money because they don't have any. And kind of the middle class is holding their cards close and holding their assets close and not spending on discretionary items because they're protecting themselves for the future. And all this being said, that takes excess demand out of the economy, which causes the economy to slow. Now, this brings up an interesting point. It seems like everybody across the country is cheering for rate cuts and want rate cuts to happen and want them to happen fast. But it's a double-edged sword, because if Bank of Canada is cutting rates, that means the economy is struggling, so they need to cut rates to stimulate things. So rate cuts may help you in one way, but may hurt you in another way. They may help you if you're a first-time buyer trying to get into the market. If you're on a variable rate mortgage, your monthly payment's going to come down, but in the same vein, it may hurt you because maybe you don't get that raise at your job. Maybe you lose your job. Maybe you get your hours cut or something like that. So we have to take that into account, right? Like rate cuts don't happen and everything's just humming along. Rate cuts are happening for a reason. So it is a double-edged sword. And when I see everybody just cheering on rate cuts and wanting rate cuts to happen, I think it's kind of silly because you're not really realizing the big picture. So with all the talk around interest rate cuts, the next Bank of Canada rate announcement is on September 4th. And as I said, I think the data suggests that they will cut rates again, probably 25 basis points, which may be the little kick that the fall market needed, because these last 2 rate cuts, to me, haven't really done much for the housing market. So heading into fall with another cut under our belt, that would be 3 cuts in a row. There's a case to be made that this will stimulate the market, but only time will tell. So thank you guys for watching this video, and see you next week.